Hey folks, Dr. Mike Israel here for Renaissance Periodization. Today's video, in-depth dive, is about the importance of controlling the weight, not your body weight, the weight you're lifting, as you get stronger, especially much stronger. Let's take a look at what we're talking about here. So let's first talk about the relationship between strength gain as you get stronger and injury risk. Initially, probably for a few years, as you get stronger, your risk of injury declines. Why? Well, first of all, this is a good thing. Why? You can generate more stability when you're stronger, and your connective tissues get stronger too. You can generate enough counterbalancing forces to make sure that no excessive force is put on one part of your body or something like that. To give a really crazy example, I believe it was found that one of the number one reasons why old people fracture their hips isn't from the literal concussive force of the fall, of them hitting the ground. It's because they slip and they try to base out and put the other leg out. And the fact that they exert a lot of force putting the leg down on the ground actually ends up breaking their hip. Holy crap. If you train with weights, the very opposite of that happens for a very long time. Everything gets stronger, bones get stronger, connective tissues get stronger. Technically, the bones are connective tissues, your tendons, ligaments, etc. Your muscles get stronger. All is well, your injury rate goes down. Probability of any one time you getting hurt in the gym or even in other physical activity. However, as you get really strong, your injury risk starts to climb back up a little bit. Why? This is pretty counterintuitive, but once I explain, you might be like, okay, that makes a little bit of sense. First, your muscles are now so strong, they can produce enough force to tear themselves. How many pec tears, full avulsions, have you seen of 45-year-old women who just started training 2 years ago? What? That may have never happened. There may be one person in the world that's ever happened to. How many low weight class powerlifters or not very good powerlifters have you ever seen tear their pecs? It's incredibly rare. What about super heavyweight powerlifters and gigantic bodybuilders? Ooh, more common. Why? Because their muscles get so big and strong, they can generate such insane forces that parts of them start to collapse. If you're really weak, gee whiz, the world can hurt you, but you can't really hurt yourself all that much. Factor number one. Next factor. Your tendons have the capacity to get bigger and stronger, but they generally don't scale up as fast or more completely as does muscle strength. You take one individual who has relatively untrained tendon and untrained muscle, and their muscle is not so strong, and their tendon is not so strong. You take a well-trained individual, their muscle is very strong, and their tendon is also very strong. Great, right? The muscle's not going to pull the tendon off by itself. Same chance when they were untrained as when they were very well-trained, because while, yes, your muscle got really strong, the tendon got strong enough to compensate. If you get really, really big and really, really strong, your muscles can get very strong, but your tendons are just extra strong, not very super extra strong. So the muscle strength to tendon strength disparity tends to grow when you get exotically big. This compounded by the fact that many people use anabolic steroids to get very big, and they actually increase that probability, sometimes just through independent mechanisms of some of them capping how strong your tendons can get and even sometimes making them weaker under special circumstances while the muscle gets gigantic and strong. But even for drug-free folks, you get really big and strong, and all of a sudden your tendons are we're attached to what? It can generate how much force? Good God, I imagine a tendon is a little guy that holds your muscle to your bone. He's like, Jesus Christ, what did I get myself into? Yeah, it sounds like Mickey Mouse, I suppose. So at some point, your muscles get so big and strong that they sort of start to leave your tendons behind a little bit. And at first, it's not a big problem, but after a while, max bench, max squat, huge, super high force pull-up, yeah, your muscles are strong enough to maybe have a slightly higher probability of pulling the tendons off the bone. Not very good. Next one is when you go off track, when you get out of your groove. Small weights cause small forces when you get off the groove. So if you're doing a dumbbell press with the 50s and you go, whoa, like that, not a whole lot happened. I mean, it's, some amount of force to structures that weren't used to getting it, but this is the absolute amount of force isn't that high. If you're dumbbell benching the 150s and you lose one track, that can break some stuff. Okay, that can definitely break some stuff, and then you're in for a world of hurt. So when you're using big weights, the risk doesn't just rise relatively and your strength compensate for it. It actually rises absolutely and your strength can't compensate for it as much as we would hope. Next one is that when you train and you're very, very big and strong, you can generally impose more total tissue damage than when you're weak. Okay, weaker people lift weights, they get sore and then they heal in 2 days and they're fine. Strong people lift weights, they get like unreal crazy psycho sore if they want, and then it takes a while to heal. That muscle, the volume of muscle you're healing is huge, so that every time you almost heal and train again, the amount of residual cumulative damage is higher than you would see in someone who's smaller and weaker. So as you add that up together over the multiple weeks of an accumulation phase, you get into a situation where like after 4 weeks of hard training, a super big, super strong person, and they're so pre-damaged that they're vulnerable in a bunch of areas and injury starts to be a much more realistic concern. Whereas a weaker person, they can't impose that much damage on themselves, and thus they're not at high risk, right? So these are facts, right? Big facts, as you young YouTubers say. And they're a problem for us because of one very specific thing. It's precisely those of us that have tried to get as big and strong as possible that care the most about not getting hurt. And now we've pulled ourselves into a situation in which we have a higher injury risk than we would like, precisely by doing exactly what it is we wanted, which was get as big and jacked as possible and as strong as possible. So being that we're not going to abandon the idea of getting jacked just because we're scared of injury, we want an action plan or a series of things we can do that reduce our probability of getting hurt, but allow us to continue to get even more jacked and even stronger. Let's take a look. We have 8 recommendations. These are things you can put right into the intellectual bank. If you forget them, you can just watch the video over again. Take notes if you want. But this is something you can do and start to thread into your lifting more and more and more as you get bigger and stronger. And eventually, it'll reduce your absolute chance of injury risk over your career, or reduce the magnitude of the injuries so you won't have these psychotic, super traumatic injuries, just like sort of mini ones that aren't a big deal. And it'll super help you in that regard because you won't have to be like, damn it, I wish I never tore my pec. Of course, everyone who ever tears their pec says that. You want to be the person that, turns 45 and starts to do more cardio and goes to sort of the Coach Greg Doucette way and shrinks down and lives a beautiful life with family for, 50 additional years. And you can look back and say, yeah, I'm really glad I never had a pec tear. That's much better. You guys watching this now, most of you have never had a pec tear, quad tear, lat tear, so on and so forth. We want to keep it this way. So here's some tips on your way to getting really jacked and really strong that I wish somebody told me, because I would have for sure done them and I wouldn't have pulled half the muscles I pulled. Here we go. Point number 1. Warm up more extensively. This doesn't mean frivolous extra warm-ups, you foam rolling your dick, right? Which I've heard. A little canary flew up and told me, it doesn't feel that bad. Sometimes it feels good. You're a bad boy for doing it. Who cares? But the canary actually stood there and watched me for a while I did this very strange interaction. Hail Satan. In any case, warming up is awesome. You don't need to do more warm-ups, but you could do enough warm-ups to where you really feel warm and potentiated for your next big set, which means instead of doing, let's say you're squatting 400 pounds, instead of doing 135 for 10, 225 for 6, 315 for 4, and then going 405 for 10 or whatever, maybe throw in a 405 or 425 for a double. Very low chance of injury, but you get to handle the weight. You get to settle your technique with the big weight. You get a nervous system boost out of that, which means your technique on the actual work set's going to be more stable. Maybe if one day you feel like, you're like, I got a little twinge, like, is there scar tissue in there? What's going on? Take an extra set to warm up. Take an extra set to feel it out. That will help, because here's the deal. One of 2 things may happen in that extra set. You might do it and it gets really like it's slightly heavier. Let's say you're planning a set of 15 on heavy machine flies, and you put the working weight in there and you just do a set of 4 and you're like, ugh, by the 4th one, it really feels bad. You're like, I'm doing something else. I'm going to take a mini deload. Fuck that. But if you feel it out and it feels great, you're good. It's like red light, green light, right? So if you're weaker, politically correct, weaker, look, you can warm up plenty or not that much and you'll probably be fine. Like if a woman comes into the gym and she's started training, half a year ago and she's like, I don't want to warm up. I just want to start deadlifting 135. It's clearly a stupid idea, but you're not going to be like, oh, here we go, injury city. She'll probably be fine, right? If a woman comes into the gym and she's like a high-level power lifter and she's like, I'm just going to go cold and deadlift 405, you're going to be like, Jamie, are you out of your fucking mind? What? So take the quality time you need to warm up explore the territory more if you're like not so sure if your muscles are ready or if there's something going on. Huge, huge, huge benefit. So here's the thing. You spend 30 more seconds or 2 more minutes out of your fucking day doing this, and it could be the difference between a career-ending injury or a career-stalling injury or just a giant 2-week nuisance versus nothing at all. Easy trade-off. Point number 2. Start your mesocycles at conservative loads and conservative sets. Okay, last time it took you 8 sets to blast your pecs, but you did a deload week. Don't start at 8. Start at 6 or 5. You'll get a great workout, and then you can add sets later and finish the next one at 9. Okay, a lot of guys and girls get really psyched up like, yeah, I did 8 sets last time, took a deload, let's start with 9. Don't do that. High elevations of volume from a low volume base, which was your deload, tend to predict injury quite well. You don't want to put yourself in that scenario. What are these magic gains that you're getting in the first session that you can't just get in the second, third, and fourth? Okay, lifting weights properly is about a building process, not an instant skyscraper process, all right? And what about loads? Well, look, you use the loads that are manageable for the reps that you want without getting super close to failure too early. You got to just ego check yourself. You're like, okay, I finished the last week of accumulation at 365 for sets of like 8 or whatever in the deadlift. And I ideally would just clearly want to start at 365 again, or even, I don't want repeated weights. I want to start at 375 for sets of 8 in this first week of the meso. But I figure if I do that, I'll just burn myself out towards the end and really risk injury because I'm just pushing way too hard. Maybe I'll just start at 355, 365, 75, 85. That whole mesocycle goes through its course, and you've added 10 pounds to how much weight you were lifting with very low risk of injury. Now, you could have added 20 with a high risk of injury. I'll let you figure out which one of those is best, right? Because listen, over time, there's plenty of time in your career to add weight to the bar, but injuries sap that time away. So you got to make the trade-off. Number 3, really start managing your psych-ups. When you weigh 120 pounds, you can bash your head into a Smith machine and probably not get hurt because your neck is so tiny it doesn't matter. When you're gigantic and super strong, you can pull your own muscles off the bone. You have that power. You don't want to use it, so psyching up should be something you don't do regularly. Now, you can get zoned in, but don't go psychotic and think of all your traumatic childhood memories. You can pepper that stuff in maybe in the last workout of a mesocycle, specifically at isolation lifts. Like if you're doing high rep curls and on the 4th set, you need to psych up. Look, you're not going to hurt yourself doing high rep cable curls with sets of 20. I'm like out of here. If you were going to get hurt doing that, you would have just gotten hurt one way or another. Feel free to psych up. But if it's like week 2 of heavy deadlifts and you're like, I wouldn't do that. If there's 6 plates in the bar, I wouldn't do that, right? Really, really not such a great idea. In addition to that, in this whole sort of umbrella of managing your psych-ups, never ever lose technical control. There is a way to psych up in which you still do the technique properly, which means you minimize your injury risk. If you psych up so much that your technique breaks down, you're asking for it. You're simultaneously providing the destabilizing emphasis of poor technique and the grotesquely higher than usual forces. Like, if I had to design a way to get hurt, I would do that. I would say the opposite of all these is how you get hurt. Don't warm up, start a meso at psychotic loads and 50 trillion sets, psych up and lose control and don't even know what technique you're doing. Bad news. Number 4, control the eccentric, which doesn't mean doing this for 10 fucking years. It means, at least like 2 or 3 seconds, then boom, and then 2 or 3 seconds, and then boom, and just control. Don't just do this. When you drop your bench, don't drop it. Slowly lower it. You don't have to pause. We'll get to that in a sec. But at least stop for a split second and then go. Don't go boing, 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 right? If you start controlling your eccentric, you will lose reps, okay? If you can curl 95 pounds for a set of 10, quote unquote, normally, like that, you may only be able to curl it for 7 if you control the eccentric. Thing is, the time under tension is the same, / maybe even higher with the eccentric control. Like God probably doesn't look down at you and judges you for not doing 10 reps. God's probably like, hey, that's 7 reps is excellent. Okay, and nobody else at the gym gives a shit, so it's literally just all you. Now, I know you used to do 95 for 10, and cleaning up your technique hurts your ego, and you're like, man, I hope nobody's judging me. Sorry, God. God doesn't care, neither does anyone else. You're doing a good job, and then within 3 or 4 months, you're going to be curling 95 for 10 the right way, super low injury risk, and you get more hypertrophy. So this is one of these that checks the boxes, controlling the eccentric. Not only does it decrease injury risk, it probably enhances hypertrophic benefits somewhat. Win, 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 all around. People want the maximum number of reps per set for some goddamn reason, and they'll start really doing uncontrolled movements. You're like, I got to get 15, and if I do this, I'll only get 13. How about this? Get 13, put the bar down, rest the normal time, and just do another fucking set. If it's stimulus you want, a stimulus you need. The pretty decent analogy, it falters at various levels, but a decent analogy for this is if you're at like an all-you-can-eat place and you're stuffing as much food into your mouth at one time before you swallow. Hold on. All right, time to do this again. Like, why don't you just chew normal? You can always fucking take another bite. Nobody's kicking you out for 2 hours. Like, the guy's like, everything's just fucking one set. Last set. Do your set as if it's your last. If you start doing sets as if they're your last, motherfucker, they're going to be your last more often than not. So don't do every set like it's your last. Control the living shit out of it. If you don't get the reps you want or the total volume you want or the pump you want, rest, focus, and do another set. And then if that doesn't work, do another fucking set. What are you supposed to do? Is one set to failure all the time? Like, you know what I'm saying? Arthur Jones has been gone a long time. It's 2021, right? The future is multiple sets. So does that help your ego? No, of course not. But listen, if you let your ego lead, you almost certainly get hurt. Number 5, consider pauses. At the very least, don't bounce out. So if you're doing machine chest press, you can do this, boom, control, boom. Those are pauses. You can also do this. It's totally fine. Down, up, down, touch, up. What I don't want you to do is this. Bang, bang, the machine is clean, and people are like, is that guy trying to kill himself? Was this an intervention time? Because one of those reverses of direction right here is when massive forces are generated, and they tend to, at massive forces and very long muscle length and tendon excursions, your probability of injury is higher than it should be. And what benefit do you get out of it? You can do more reps. And, that girl that's into like psychotic dumbass lifters is like, oh my God, he's crazy. Like, I want him. Sure. If you want that girl, great. Just do whatever dumbass rich piano shit you want to do in the gym, and then you're golden. But if you're in this for the long haul, you want to get as jacked as possible, make sure to consider pausing. Pause squats, benches, those are great, but you don't have to pause. Just make sure that the change of direction is gentle. No dive bombing. That's a really stupid idea. Number 6. Controlling the concentric. This is one when you get real strong and you're really concerned with injury, like you're coming close to a bodybuilding show, like within the last month or so. You don't normally have to do this. You can normally do this all the time. It's not a problem. But there's even some kind of injury risk reduction that occurs from doing a chest press on the way up like this versus like that. You could go faster, but you're not. You're intentionally capping your concentric speed. What is the downside of that? Well, it's a little less motor unit activation on the faster twitch side, but they get tired, they get activated anyway, so it's real up for grabs there. You're not going to become as good at athletic pursuits. Like if you're training for wrestling or judo or soccer or something, you want to move fast in the concentric, but you're probably a bodybuilder or a powerlifter, and last time I checked, they don't time your power lifts, so moving slow is totally fine. You don't want to be snail slow, but controlled concentric can absolutely further reduce injury. Like I said, you don't have to do it all the time. Like you're 2 weeks out of a bodybuilding show, I don't want to see you in the gym being like, bad idea, because you might get hurt. If you're a bodybuilding gym, everything really controlled, you can even get really close to failure. When it slows it down for you, that's totally fine. Notice, none of these did I say don't approach failure. If you're really injury averse, you can, and you'll very much reduce your chance of getting hurt, but you're also going to reduce your chance of success, because a lot of the stimulus comes close to failure. None of these things really interfere with success. They're all good things because we still want to get you jacked, right? Number 7, add loads and add sets more gradually. You desperately, in your very core of your being, want to add 10 pounds to the bar every squat session. But you're not an idiot, and you're already super strong. You just add 5. And someone could say, could you add 10 today? And you're like, yeah, maybe I could. But where is it that I'm going? Like, I want just enough weight to have a gradual, more stimulating effect so that the sets continue to be challenging. If I can accomplish that with 5 pounds, great. If I can accomplish it with 10, but I'm like, I have to psych up more and I have to move the bar a little faster and my injury risk goes up just a bit because it's more psyching, more bar speed, and it's a heavier load, much heavier load, maybe it's not a great idea. And even for powerlifting, you think, well, I'm powerlifter, I got to put weight on the bar. Listen, if you put 5 pounds on the bar every week for 3 years, you'll be the strongest lifter of all time, some stupid shit like that. That's just a lot of weight to add. So I really don't think that great progress in powerlifting or strongman or any physical sport, bodybuilding included, occurs from adding big additions to individual workouts week to week to week. They occur from consistency, a great underlying adaptive potential, and the ability to add at least very small loads over time. But they can be very, very small, and they're safer. In addition to that, sets. If you got a great pump and a little bit sore, Could you have a slightly more optimal stimulus? Maybe, if you added a set next time. Maybe. Maybe the answer is maybe. But that also increases your chance of injury, exposure to more total volume, it's more pulsatile, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't add a set until you do a workout and you're like, yeah, I mean, I really didn't get a huge pump, and I know for sure I'm not going to get sore, or 3 or 4 days later, you're like, I never got sore on my pecs, then add a set. A little bit more conservative, go hard in each set, go under control, it's high quality work. Adding sets should occur if you want to do it sort of algorithmically in a decision tree. The answer to, do I add sets, should be checked yes when it's like, yes, for sure. If it's maybe, just say no, right? Just like McGruff the crime dog said about drugs. I think I'm getting my 80s mascots mixed up. Just say no to adding sets if the question is answered with a maybe. Like you ask yourself and you look at all your stuff that you know about how to add sets, and you're like, should I add a set? I don't know. Then just say no, right? If you're super advanced, if you're super jacked, if you're super strong. Because when your body is adapted enough, the answer will clearly be yes. You'll be doing something, you're like, I don't have a pump, I'm not going to get sore. For sure, I add another set. Then add one. But like that, like, ooh, I should add another set. People think that's like the winning mentality in the gym. They think like winners are the ones that say yes to adding a set. Like, no, they fucking don't. Winners are the ones that hang around and have good genetics and don't get hurt. You didn't choose your genetics. You sure as hell can choose to hang around. And doing this shit, you can choose to get hurt much less. So lastly, tip number 8 is take time to deload and take active rest too. Cool thing about deloading is it actually potentiates future performance. If you never deload, you don't get nearly as good as if you deload quite frequently, every 4 to 6 weeks even. Take a whole week of easy training, right? And 1 to 2 times a year, you should take like 2 weeks out of the gym. Just disappear. Go to the lake with your family and friends. Be a normal human being. And then when you get to the cottage at night, you turn on the light in the bathroom and you look at your deflating physique, you can cry. It's okay to cry. You can cry therapeutically. Good news, your physique will go rocket back up within 2 weeks of training to the best you've ever been, right? Active rest is about thinking long-term versus short-term. You want to bang away in the gym. You don't want to take active rest. You're going to hate it. But you do shit you hate all the time. How many of you love to brush your teeth? You wake up in the morning, oh my God, I love it. What the fuck are you talking about? Brushing your teeth is annoying. You do it because you know for the long term it's good because you don't want shitty dental health. And also for the medium term when, that guy asks you out finally at Starbucks and you're like, bleh, and he's like, and he just literally dies right there from your dragon breath. So you don't like brushing your teeth, but you do it because it's a good idea. You don't like taking deals and active rest, but you do it because it's a good idea because you are a dedicated athlete that makes the right long-term decisions so that everyone down here in this human charade of mediocrity can stay there and you can slowly, casually ascend to become a living god. When you do, don't kill the rest of us. See you for the next video.